Hello, my dear students. Welcome to this overview of the second term. I have decided that we could do, a very brief explanation and presentation of some of the key elements and concepts that we have been dealing with throughout this second term. This is the exercise that I wanted to do with you last Thursday, but well, unfortunately, with my internet provider, things haven't been so easy. Even now, like the whole week, I have been very stressed about it. Um, but let's not get off track. Um, so I decided that I wanted you to have this little overview, not just because of the upcoming exam, but um, well, I really thought that these are concepts and ideas that you really need to have, um, you know, uh, clear in your heads as for your future teaching, exercise, and so on and so forth. Okay, so we start with the first reading that we had for this term. That's the Successful Bilingual and Immersion Education Models and Programs by the Pacific Policy Research Center. Um, so they presented us a lot of things very interesting, but I believe that the best way to start um, talking about some of the concepts is um, by reading this quotation from the text that says, well, a quotation by Anderson Boyer and the Southwest Educational Development Laboratory, that it was cited on this article that we were reading by the Pacific Policy Research Center. That is, bilingual education is instruction in two languages and the use of those two languages as mediums of instruction for any part or all of the school curriculum. I thought this is very interesting because it is from here that we can start distinguishing what is bilingual education and what is not. I remember some of you having some like issues with like the concept, like the broad concept of bilingual education. So for example, from this definition, we can say that second language acquisition is not the same as bilingual education, right? And many other situations like fully immersion programs and things like that just not adjust to this definition. Okay, so we were presented with the first thing was, well, we talked a little bit about the concept of immersion. Okay, and I've decided to talk about the recommended kind of immersion that we had from this text. Okay, and well, if you want to deepen on the other concepts, I mean, you have the materials, of course. Okay, so we had a little contrast here in immersion programs, and well, we had three different kinds of immersion programs: total immersion, partial immersion, and two-way immersion. It is important to remember that well, total immersion handles almost a 100% of the uh, academic spaces at school taught in target language. Okay, and the partial, we have like 50%. Okay, but we still are missing a lot of things that are being rescued by the two-way immersion um, like style of teaching, which is the one that we're being recommended by the text. Okay, and in here in the two-way immersion, we have that speakers from a majority language speaking community and speakers from a minority language speaking community are in the same classroom, and they work together as equals because their languages are equal. They have the same status in the classroom. That is why it's so important. Okay. um, so we have instructions in both languages. Okay. And academic success and bilingualism and biliteracy are fostered in both um, languages, which is something that we don't really have in other kind of immersion programs. Okay, especially when it comes to biliteracy. That's one of the key aspects here. So we had an example, if you remember the text from a school in Washington, right, where we had like children from immigrant families from Mexico and like Central America, um, like coexisting and receiving the same education as American children. Um, and there, both English and Spanish had the same status. They were used the same, and the two population that you had there in the classroom interacting, well, were able to achieve pretty much the same competencies. So that's the first concept that I want you to have, um, you know, for your teaching praxis. Okay. The second concepts that we were handling in this text and before in many others, in a lot of readings from the first term, was well, additive programs versus subtractive programs. And I bet that we can all agree that the predominant programs that we have in Colombia so far, it's like subtractive programs, as a, or at least that's what we're aiming for, right? Because the idea is that we are not really focusing on the things that can be achieved in our L1, like in Spanish, okay? But what we can do in English. So we're not, we're not cultivating our mother tongue, and that's when additive programs come in, okay, because they promote bilingualism and biliteracy over the long term, usually by adding other language to the students' existing repertoire, okay. And well, as this text had a tone, let's say, let's call it a tone or a sense to towards bilingual education programs set with like majority speaking communities and minority speaking communities. So we had four like models presented there, like it was enrichment, maintenance, and heritage. Those three have something in common, and is that they value the L1, right? The mother tongue of the learners, right? I mean, in enrichment, you have that they redevelop it, right? In maintenance, you have that they try to preserve it, and in heritage, well, it's more of a cultural perception, okay? But the one that we don't really want to use, at least according to these texts, is the transitional model, okay? And that is the one that we have in a lot of schools, a lot of bilingual schools, in which little by little, L2, in our case, at least here in Bogota, is um, Spanish, right? L1 Spanish. Little by little, that one is going to be replaced in most academic settings for English. So that's what we have to keep in mind. Okay, as so far, this text leaves us with the two-way immersion model and the additive language programs. Okay, Another important fact and aspect that we had in this reading was the importance of cultural and linguistic heritage. Okay, and here we had something very interesting that was um, like how we conceive this, like the specific situations in our classrooms as teachers. Okay, so that's why I wrote here like a lot of things enter in this category, um, like ontological, epistemological, and pedagogical perspectives. Okay, um, as to what I have in my classroom and what I'm seeing and the diversity that I have there. Okay, and like my um, I don't want to say posture, but probably my vision or my idea as the teacher that is leading and guiding the learning process in that classroom. I have to value the things that I have there, okay? And that pretty much comes to wondering uh, how can I maintain a, uh, a balance among the languages and cultures present in the classroom. Okay, in the classroom. And well, a lot of things um, can enter here, such as like the educational model that I want to have and the one that I want to apply, but always just like keeping in mind that the linguistic systems that coexist in my classroom are equally valuable, okay, as it's like they are part of my students' rights, okay, and the cultures that are intertwined with those languages have to be preserved and respected as well, okay, and well, we have to come with a way of having bilingual education programs that kind of achieve that kind of um, respect and justice that our classrooms deserve. Okay, as to finish with this reading, so like I really try to sum up everything that is like very clear, that it's as um, clear and punctual and precise as possible. Okay, so a lot of that uh, a lot of that, the importance of cultural and linguistic heritage is maintaining and preserving L1. Okay, so for that we have a lot of situations to keep in mind. Okay, that's where the researcher that we all have somewhere inside of us comes along, and well, we need to think about the socio-historical situations that we have in our classroom. Okay, um, so we would have to think of a lot of examples, okay? But I want to work with the ones that the text presented. So like if I am teaching in that classroom in Washington, D.C., I have to think, okay, I might have 10 or 15 Hispanic children in my classroom, and I have to think, okay, why why are they here? What is their context? Do they speak English in their homes or do they speak Spanish? And what level of um, or how cultivated is their L1, and so on and so forth. Okay, it would be the same if I am working here in Colombia with indigenous communities. Okay, uh, I cannot just come and like teach the language that I'm going to teach and even like try to use theirs, but I have to have that. I'm sorry for the redundancy. I have to have, but yeah, I must have that that context in my mind so I can find that balance and promote um, situations and like educational situations and exercises and dynamics in the classroom that can work along with all of these situations. Okay, I have to rethink all of that. and like the culture that they carry, and the heritage that they have. Okay, like heritage, it works with all of the examples in the book, but it's very very marked with like indigenous communities. Okay, and I have also to consider what my class represents in terms of the like what social political impact it has. Okay, maybe to the community or like the surrounding territory in general. Okay, let me remind you that um, at least here in Colombia, we didn't have um, ethnoeducation for many years. Okay, as we had some misconceptions about indigenous languages. Okay, so the fact that they are taking place right now, that has a social political impact. Okay, um, that I mean, it's not me promoting it per se, right? But it is me being an actor in a way of having those communities, and maybe the central government or like the majority language speaking community of the country, like finding ways of um, you know relate to each other and share with each other, and like having these like the opportunity to see the other. I feel like you get where I'm getting at. Okay, so we have a lot of things there in terms of maintaining and preserving the L1 that we have talked about before, like documenting and doing a lot of like research of preserving their L1, but that's just not um, enough, right? We have to have that kind of um, thought always in our classrooms. Okay, and last but not least, we have um, the concepts of community and identity. Okay, and how in many many situations, in many cases, it is the community, a particular community, thinking of ways of preserving their language, and also being able to interact and continue, and um, I don't want to say survive because that's not the idea, but um, that community is trying to find ways of um, preserving the people that they have now, and making sure that future generations are going to have, well, a future in the country or in the region where they are living. So in many cases, bilingual education programs are promoted by communities that are questioning and developing identity recognition strategies, right? And many other exercises for them to, rescue their rights and their historical uh, territories and traditions, and they need to find a way to pass that on to the future generations. Okay, so that would be pretty much it. That would be pretty much what this text has to offer. I mean, of course there's a lot more, but I would highly recommend you to focus on these concepts that I just told you. Okay, if you want to do freshen up on these concepts, you can always read like the specific immersion programs in Washington D.C., in New Zealand, in Hawaii, and or in Peru that you find in the text. Okay, but you're going to find that throughout all of them, I mean, after considering their socio-historical, socio-political, and other situations of their specific context, um, very, very, or like many aspects of uh, that made those programs successful are very, very similar. Okay, so take some notes, keep studying, and you can go and watch the next video. Okay, thank you very much.